Alright guys, how you doing? It's been a wee while. I'm sunburnt to shit because spring in Scotland, it's a scorcher. Didn't think I needed suntan lotion, but apparently I do. I wanted to talk to you guys about filling the void. Filling the void after you've given up gambling and letting you guys know what I got up to, and you'll see behind me exactly what it was, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. When you give up gambling, you'll find that there's a hole in your life. And it's very very hard to fill that hole, and a lot of people move on to something else very quickly afterwards to try and it's like quench that thirst. It's like meet that need, and that can manifest itself in many many ways. Now I've seen people that they'll just hit the gym. The gym's healthy, obviously. You don't need me to tell you that, but it can become unhealthy if it becomes a new obsession when it becomes out of control again, like anything else. I see it with people who they'll all of a sudden they want to start a small business and they put all their energy into that. People who will start doing things that look or are very similar to gambling in a way. If you strip it all down, it's the same process, it's the same dopamine hits that you get. And that was me, and it manifested with all these bloody computer games that I'd picked up. And 6 years on, I'm finally getting around to selling the last box because this was one of a couple, and a lot more bits and pieces throughout the years. So let me take you back. I used to do a lot of my gambling in the bookies. So I'd go in the Apple BTs and I'd pile my money into there. And when I was giving up gambling, I really, really struggled because I'd have to walk past these bookies all the time. And where I live, the bookies come with charity shops. So quite often you'd find the bookies and a couple of doors down or even next door, in my case, was a charity shop. My behaviour at the time, even before I'd given up gambling, it was in a very infant stage and I was still very impulsive, and it was quite worrying. And on reflection now, I probably wasn't in a good place. I might have felt like I was on top of the world and I'd got my shit together, but I really hadn't. I was taking refuge in these charity shops. Now I'd learned on YouTube about old retro video games, and I don't play a lot of games. That's the truth. But I went down a rabbit hole and learned a lot about games. And all of a sudden I feel like I can buy games and turn them for a profit. So I'd go in, I'd rake and rake and rake. I'll tie this up. I'd rake and rake and rake, and I'd stick them on eBay. Now eBay essentially became a betting app for me because I used to watch the auction come in, and I'd be excited waiting for that to end, for the wee ticker to count down to zero. And if I had made a profit on that game, I'd felt like I'd beat the system. So if I picked up the game for £1 and sold it for a tenner, that gave me that dopamine hit that I was missing without gambling. And if I was to find a especially rare game, it was like hitting the jackpot in slots. So I used to go into charity shop after charity shop after charity shop, and I'd do this sometimes all day. I'd walk from one end of the city to the other, and I'd come back with shit. So I'd come back with games that I knew a wee bit about, but I'd also come back with just random stuff, thinking, well, I'll turn that over, I could sell that. It wasn't healthy, guys, but it was entirely necessary at the time. I needed that at the time to keep me out of the bookies, but I didn't appreciate at the time just how out of hand and obsessive that was becoming. Because I went from charity shops to going to boot sales on a Sunday morning and trying to beat other folk, raking for video games and try to get there early and whatnot. And the legacy is I've now got a shit ton of games and stuff to sell. I'm over that point in my life. But my advice to you is to just be careful. Alright, and let somebody in, especially. Let a friend in, let a family member in. Somebody that might see in you what you're not seeing in yourself. And maybe it'll just pull you back if your behaviour is a wee bit erratic and out of control. Because I didn't see this with me. But I was just dealing with the hangover of gambling, and that was the only way that I could process and do that at the time to give him a fighting chance. But it's dangerous because I'm still fucking about with that process of the dopamine hits and the wee rush, and I was getting that all from this. And so even if it was small financial risk, because I wasn't going in the charity shops and spending hundreds of quid. We're talking small money here, but I was still keeping that process alive. And I would not have been surprised if by when all this had blown over, I went back to gambling, but I didn't. And I'm not here to judge. I always say whatever works for you, all right? Because gambling addiction, it's very individual, and whatever works for you, great. But just be careful, all right? As I said, best way of doing that, let someone in, just to keep you in check and to make sure you're doing all right. And try and, if you can, transition into something that's a wee bit more healthier and less erratic. Is that because I see it quite a lot online with people, and it's a difficult one for me because I want to be encouraging, but I also see what the pitfalls are, and and I wouldn't recommend anyone to sort of delve into that. But it's not about people making bad choices again. It's just another continuation of getting over gambling, and it manifests in many many different ways. The one that makes me laugh actually is folk raking in the supermarket for discounted stuff, because I used to do that. I still do that, but the reason I did it at the time is because it was beating the man, beating the system. That loser paid £3 for his sandwich, well I got mine for 20p, feeling like I'd won. And I would go in and then I'd come up with stuff that I'm not needing. That's small scale gambling for me, because for me personally, because I'm keeping that alive, keeping that feeling, keeping that winning feeling alive. And I've probably got a few more examples of stuff that I did at the time, and but it was such a blur. The main thing is I'm gamble free, but I would reckon the first few months to a year of me giving up gambling was still a very vulnerable and challenging time. And on reflection, I probably didn't appreciate that until further down the road. But now, just a reminder, I've got to sell all this stuff, so that'll be my Sunday afternoon. I'd be interested to hear where you are at and what you're doing to fill the void, because it's a perfectly natural thing. But I'd be really curious to see what you're doing and what you're putting your energy into, because it takes time, guys. All right. The key thing is you want to keep those things healthy, but at the time you may not fully appreciate or understand what's healthy and what's not. All right. Let me know. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and speak to you all soon. Take it easy.